So, this is a sikha that incorporates a few ideas. Some of them are classic ideas about the idea of why and what does it mean, the Talmid Rabbi Akiva, loino, kavod zeh b'zeh, but also bringing it to a further level, like the Rebbe always does. There'll be a topic which the Rebbe discussed in previous sikhs, and then he'll add and increase that idea, like we had about Achrei Mois, but the Rebbe added to that. One of the reasons, Aleph, Talmid Rabbi Akiva, Asher Meisum Pesach V'Alatzeres, why are we happy during Lag BaOmer? Because Lag BaOmer is Poskum Elamus. Another reason, base, Zeu Hailulav Shrab Shim B'Yechai. Yoim Mistalkusi Shrab Shim B'Yechai, Asher Hoira L'Smoyach B'Yoim Mistalkusei. And this is the reason the Rebbe says in a footnote, why even though ordinarily, when it comes to Misas Tzadikim, in Shulchan Aruch it's brought down that the date of the passing of a tzaddik is actually a sad day. They were geyser dainas. In Shulchan Aruch it's brought down that Moshe Rabbeinu's yahrzeit Zayin Adar, people used to fast then. We know that Shabbos HaGadol, we do it on Shabbos, not on the 10th of Nisan. Why? Because the 10th of Nisan is a date when Miriam passed away. So we see that in general, the passing away of a tzaddik is something that is considered a negative thing. It's a fast day. But Rab Shimon bar Yochai was something unusual, something special, because he specifically said that people should rejoice on the day of his passing. And it's Al Pi Halacha that Rebbe brings down, Al Pi Nigla, that if someone says not to mourn him or whatever, you're supposed to follow his wishes. You do listen to him. If a person, before he passes away, says, I don't want people mourning me, there's a whole halachic discussion about it. Can he say so? Can he not say so? Do we listen to him? Do we not listen to him?
Are there other cases?
Are there other cases of tzaddikim that said that? I'm not aware of it. But al pi Chassidus it's explained because the revelation of Pnimis HaTorah, actually we'll leave that for the end of the Sikha, the Rebbe brings us in a little bit over there, that because the great revelation that takes place on the day of a passing of a tzaddik, so in some cases it's not clear and open. But because the Rashbi was the one that revealed Pnimis HaTorah, so the revelation and the great oir is something that's begoli, and that's why we're besimcha on Lag BaOmer. So the Rebbe goes on to say, Kol ha'inyanim b'Torah meduyakim l'chalut tzarich le'mar eifoi sheyesh kesher mehusi bein shnei ha'iruyim halalu b'noisef l'kach sh'Rab Shimon bar Yochai hu talmidei shel Rabbi Akiva. We're going to speak about soon that there's 5 Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva that remained after the passing of the 24,000 Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva. One of them was Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, there was Rabbi Meir, there was others. Some places brought down there were 7 Talmidim, and the whole entire Torah Shabbat Peh was based on what Rabbi Akiva communicated to those 5 Talmidim. Derech Agav, it's brought down in Sfarim. What's the true? 24,000 Talmidim passed away, but there were different times and different situations where a lot of Yidden passed away, but we were killed or whatever, and we don't establish it as a day or a time period of mourning. So one of the explanations given is because Rabbi Akiva was the one who had really encapsulated the whole Torah Shebaal Peh. The whole idea and the whole teaching of Torah Shebaal Peh was through Rabbi Akiva. And that was going to be transmitted through his 24,000 students. So what happened was that the whole entire Torah Shebaal Peh was endangered because of the passing of 24,000 students. In the end, we're going to explain different expressions that show that the 5 students that remained, these were the ones upon who the entire Torah Shebaal Peh was now established on. So they saved the day from what happened from the 24,000 students that passed away. So the Rebbe says, "V'yesh la'avim ma'wa kesher bein ha'uvda sh'tamid Rabbi Akiva pasku b'lamuz l'bein ha'ilul sh'Rab Shimon bar Yochai v'lachura zeh davar v'yipuchai." Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai haya echad mechameshes Talmid Rabbi Akiva asher noisru b'chayim v'heim ha'midu Torah. That's what it means ha'midu Torah in the simple sense. They were the ones that now established the Torah Sheba'al Peh that was in danger of being lost when the 24,000 Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva passed away. So the 5 that remained, they were the ones that reestablished the chain and the link of the Messiah of Torah Sheba'al Peh that Rabbi Akiva was teaching.
Who were those 5?
I looked at it before the Shir. There was a Meir, who's the author, who's the Stam Mishnah of Meiri. There's Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. There was a certain Rabbi Yehuda, I don't remember which one. There was a certain Rabbi Yossi, and I don't remember which one. Each one was actually responsible for a different part of Torah Sheba'al Peh. Rabbi Meir, for example, was responsible for Mishnayos. That's why Stam Mishnah Rabbi Meir. There was another person, another Tana, who was responsible for all Braises or Toseftas, was from him. The Sifri, which is the Medrash Halacha, was by someone else. So in other words, one of them is the Rashbi. So each one of them literally had a certain kav, a certain line of Torah Sheba'al Peh that was their doing, and that they were the ones that were the authors or the compilers of that section of Torah Sheba'al Peh.
Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai and Rabbi Akiva were Tanaim, נכון?
Right, but Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai was a Talmud of Rabbi Akiva. Right. Loimar hasimcha al kach shtamid Rabbi Akiva pasku melamus madgisha shelag ba'omer hu hayom shebay Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai v'talmidim ha'achreinim, the last ones that were left over shel Rabbi Akiva, noitzru b'chayim. So what are we celebrating? We're celebrating not death, we're celebrating life. That there were certain Talmidim remained alive. What happens on Lag BaOmer? We're also celebrating death. So we're celebrating, what are we celebrating? The yard site? Or we're celebrating being alive? We're celebrating the passing away, or we're celebrating the idea of remaining alive. It's a tarta de sasre. It's something that's self-contradictory. What's the emphasis over here? The famous word in the Geras HaKodesh, the Alter Rebbe says that when a tzaddik passes away, so the entire energy, the entire amshachas, everything that he did his entire lifetime in Torah mitzvahs come together now as a big and greater revelation on the day of his passing. Because what's the true life of a tzaddik? The true life of a tzaddik is his spiritual life, not his physical body. Move on. On that day, the Rebbe brings in the footnote 9 over there, that's why it says, when do we call it Chaye Sarah? In the day that she passed away. Because that's when you saw the real life. That's when you saw the real power, the real energy, the ruchnius of the tzaddik came revealed then. Rabbi Akiva that Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai's avodah was what stopped the passing of the Talmidim. Kilahal, like we'll explain later on. Yom Ha'ilula, the day of his yard site, Kasher Shleimus Avedasa Me'ira Begilui, Hu Hayom Shebay Pasku Lag BaOmer, when his avodah was Meir Begilui, that's the very day that it stopped passing away. In other words, even though in time it happened later, because they stopped passing away not after Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai passed away, they stopped passing away before Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai passed away. But still in all, there's already, that date in the calendar is already a Yom Zakai. Like it says, the Rebbe Lartans brings down the word, Megalgalim Schus L'Yom Zakai. What does that mean, that we bring a schus, a meritorious day? That means that even before the event happens, that day is already a special day. And that is the reason why the special event will happen later on. So it's not just that the Rashbi passed away on Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer has a specialness to it. And that's the day that the Rashbi will eventually pass away. And that power of the Rashbi and that power of that day is why the Talmid Rabbi Akiva stopped passing away, as we'll explain later on. There is
anything else similar that something that happened in the future, a merit of that, something good happened before? זה נשמע כמו חידוש של הרבי.
There's...
אז זה קרה אחר כך, הרבי אומר שבזכות העבודה של רבי שמעון בר יוחאי, שהוא נפטר אחר כך, פסקו מלמות, הרי פסקו מלמות זה קרה לפני כן. הוא מת אחרי.
So, similar, not mamish b'diuk, is the famous thing that it says in the sefer of the malach that used to reveal himself to the Rabbi Yosef Karo, the Beis Yosef, and he used to write down the different dreams that he had, different chidushei Torah that he had, and he used to write down the dates. And he said the malach that came to him, that he called him a magid because he used to relate to him what happened above, or chidushei Torah and what's going on above, told him Yom Besura, that today is a day of good news, and the date was Yutas Kislev. Now, the story with Beis Yosef happened many years, obviously, for Alter Rebbe. Alter Rebbe wasn't even alive in the times of the Beis Yosef. So we see this idea that, it's you can find the sefer. I mean, you can go on HebrewBooks.org if you don't have the physical sefer, and you can find it. It says in it that this is a day of Besura. And what's the day of Besura? The day of Besura is something that happened, whatever it was, 200 years later. I'm not sure exactly the dates.
כן, אבל פה הרב אומר חידוש, שזה מה שגרם לפוסק עולמות.
Exactly. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
So the Rebbe asks that the amongst those 5 Talmidim, it was only Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai who passed away on that day. Sarich loimer sha'inyan shel pask milamos kosher b'miyuchad elav yoyser masher la'arba'as talmidim acher. So the question is, v'ameh shoyn Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai b'inyan zeh, in encountering the paskulamos me'arba'as talmidim acherim shel Rabbi Akiva. Why was there something about Rabbi Shimon's life that was able, that his Torah Avodah that concluded on the day of Lag BaOmer should counter-effect the passing of the Talmid Rabbi Akiva? Kedei lahasbir zois, yesh lahagdim olavirus v'aymer chazal, shechav daled elef Talmid Rabbi Akiva, lo yinagu kavod zelazeh. So this is the famous thing that I said the Rebbe explains in other places as well. Ki l'chura tamu, harei Rabbi Akiva hu bala maimer v'ahavta l'rach kamoicha zeh klal gadol b'Torah. So of all people, how can it be that his own Talmidim should be ones that should not be fulfilling this? V'keitzer yitachin shetalmidav asher toiras emes mechana oisam Talmidei Rabbi Akiva lo yinagu kavod zelazeh. If Torah calls them Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, it doesn't mean that they're just they came over there and they put down their hat in the yeshiva and then they left, It means that we're real makablim. They were real students of Rabbi Akiva. They lived a life that Rabbi Akiva would have wanted. And still in all, what did Rabbi Akiva stand for? What did Rabbi Akiva teach? They're not living up to that. So they're like, in what way? How can you call them Talmid Rabbi Akiva? Obviously, they were Talmid Rabbi Akiva. And still in all, it was loy nagu kavod zebazeh. Echad has be'erim lakachum. L'chol echad Talmid Rabbi Akiva ha'isad derech mishaloi lahavin as Toras Rabbi. The Rebbe says, just like by, let's say, Talmid Rabbi Yochanan Mezakeh, we have in Pirkei Avos. So Rabbi Yochanan Mezakeh described the Talmidim, different styles. This one is like that, and this one's like this, and this one is like doesn't lose a drop, and this one is like a mashpech, like a funnel. And then each one was asked, what is the best way to serve Hashem, and what's a good way that a person should pick out? And each one said something different. They were all Talmidim Rabbi Yochanan Mezakeh, but still, each one took what they received from Rabbi Yochanan Mezakai, and they went in a different direction. A similar example is brought down concerning Hillel and Shammai. Hillel and Shammai were Talmidim of Shmai and Naftalian. Yet we find all the machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. How does it come? They were all learning by the same Rebbe. How does it come out? But Shmai and Naftalian gave them the general idea, and then each one took it and brought it out according to the seichel that Eibishter gave them. The same thing. Each one of Talmidei Rabbi Akiva had his own mahalach, had his own approach, his own gang, in the words of Rabbi Akiva. ובהסם לקח הוא עובד את השם, אצל האחד היה עיקר אהבת השם, אצל האחר יראת השם הקדומה. וכל אחד מהם היה חדור כל כך באופן לימודי ועבודתו, עד אשר כל אחד חשב שמי שאינו הולך בדרך זו, שלמוסוי נפגמת. So therefore, if that person that doesn't appreciate this idea of Rabbi Akiva that I understand, so it bugged him to no end. He couldn't live with that. He couldn't take it. And therefore, b'yosim Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, asher haya nilhav b'inyan v'ahavta le'ach kamoicha, dafke because of their Avos Yisrael, lo yistapik kol echad mehem bal yosim echayel chayel ba'atzmoi. He's going to say, I got it. I got the gang. I figured out how I'm supposed to be oil and avodas Hashem. The other guy at the table doesn't get it? No, Yelai Shalai. No, I have Avos Yisrael. It bothers me when the other Talmud doesn't get it. I've mentioned this before, that I had a Rosh Shiva that bawled out some of the Bachrim once and said that when he used to learn as a Bachar in France, if your Chavrusa didn't get the Gemara or didn't understand the Gemara the way you understood, you're fighting around with each other, you're at each other's throats. What do we mean? How do you learn chat this way? And over here, it's about the shoot. Everybody's calm. You want to learn it that way, hate. I have my way of understanding, you have your way. No, because of Avos Yisrael, the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva were concerned. You're not serving the Eibishter correctly. You're not having the correct way to connect with the Eibishter. And then, but there was a reaction to that. They didn't accept it just because I told them so. I was like, no, which is a milah, like he says, that it says that the Shvatim could not speak in peace to Yosef. Why? So Rashi explains, it showed on their honesty. They weren't going to just make nice, but inside they would be upset, they would be angry, they would be jealous, whatever. They had to say it openly. So the same thing with Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, when they saw that the other Talmidim didn't get the truth, so they were open, they were clear about it. His fellow is missing in his shleimus avodas Hashem. So he says, "B'yoisam Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, move on. She'oifen zeh shel avodas liyes chadurim kol kach b'derech ha'avoda shelahem ad kedei ikabolas efsharis shel shleimus gam b'derech acheres yesh lo shoyrish gam b'avodas shel Rabbi Akiva ba'atzmai." Not just because they heard from Rabbi Akiva that you have to have Avos Yisrael, but also there was something about Rabbi Akiva's avodah that said you got to do something, you do it all the way. You don't do anything halfway. Adasof. You have to completely do it. Where do we see this for Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva chai kol yamav b'tshuka l'inyan shel Mesirus Nefesh. Super b'Gemara that when Rabbi Akiva was being killed by the Romans, so the Talmidim asked him, how are you able to handle this and so on? Rabbi Akiva amra Talmidav kol yamai hayisi mitztayer masayav el yadav akamenu. My whole life I was in pain and suffering. When will I finally be able to fulfill the idea of Mesirus Nefesh? So it's not just on the moment that he was Chas v'Shalom killed that he had the idea of Mesirus Nefesh. His whole life was a life of Mesirus Nefesh. Mesirus Nefesh makifa v'chederes la'adam kulay. Kasher adam nimtza ba'avodah shel Mesirus Nefesh. Ein shum koyach ay prat ben nafshe she'einenu chadur Mesirus Nefesh zu. Mesirus Nefesh is not just a partial thing. It's not just part of my being. It takes around, it encompasses my whole Mesirus. They could not compartmentalize. They couldn't, let's put it, okay, I tried, the guy's not listening, fine, leave it alone. They were completely immersed in that avodah, and they couldn't hear, they couldn't accept, they couldn't relate to someone of a different avodah. Hem kiblu Rabbi Akiva tshuka zul Mesirus Nefesh. V'lechein kol inyan b'avodas Hashem ha'yechader etzlam Mesirus Nefesh v'hishpia v'chodar al kol metziyusam. Hem ismasru l'inyan zeh b'chol libam v'nafsham ad kedei kach shlo yehaya mokim b'yisasha l'shum inyan acher. Want to say something?
But still, like the inyan of Rabbi Akiva was one inyan. ואהבת לרעך כמוך.
So
other stuff was were.
He's going to explain another nekuda in it, how even the Mesirus Nefesh of Rabbi Akiva was different than their Mesirus Nefesh. True, they inherited the Mesirus Nefesh of Rabbi Akiva, but one thing they like messed up with the Mesirus Nefesh of Rabbi Akiva. Lamroi zois belilis chashiv b'mayla g'doil shalvei dasam loyhoya ze b'shleimus lefi hakavana ru'uya. Avodah zu shel Mesirus Nefesh belvad mevia sa'adam lidei rotzui. Rotzui means harotzain lotzis min ha'olam ulagia lakadosh baruch hu b'klois ha'nefesh. Their soul wants to leave their body behind, like nadav aviv. V'lachein lamrois she'avuram zoi ma'ila nefla avodah metoch Mesirus Nefesh, but ein zois hakavana b'shleimusi, to go out of the body. That's not the purpose. Ki hakavana el yoynehi shem Mesirus Nefesh harotzi tered v'tavi yoyser l'shuv lamshachas alakus lamato. Chassidus says that the purpose of the neshama, feeling a great love for Hashem, feeling a powerful desire to Hashem, is not to want to leave the body, but to take that feeling and bring it down into the world. To take that connection with Hashem and show how we could be in the physical body, in this world, and maintain our connection. If you don't have a ratzui at all, so then a person could be in this world and feel disconnected from Hashem. But by having a ratzui, and then transplanting that ratzui into the shuv, into coming down into this world, so while being here in this world, I could be aware of the Eibishter and be connected with the Eibishter while being involved in this world. And that's what Rabbi Akiva stood for. That this is necessary for that, the idea of intellect. The idea of the avodah shalom aylam etam v'das, the neshama wants to fly out of his body. But you need to have together with that, the avodah shal pitam v'das, that the person should realize that there's a purpose. Loyla toyu bra el l'sheves yitzara. There's a purpose I should be down here. Yesh loymar shezeu apirush apnimi shel maimer chazal v'kulam meisu. The Gemara says, when it tells the story over there about what happened to Talmid Rabbi Akiva, the simple meaning of that Maimer Chazal is, like we said, the Torah Shabbat Peh was supposed to be communicated and continue through these 24,000 Talmidim. Now was Shamim. It was empty of Torah. The communication of Torah, the continuation of Torah was missing, was gone. But here he explains there could have been many different expressions the Chazal could have used. Ha'olam Shamim is similar to this idea about Loyla Toyu Bra L'Sheves Yitzara, being out of this world, The world's a destroyed world. We're not dealing with the world. We're out of this world. Kivin shavei dasam of the Talmid Rabbi Akiva. Haysa ba'efen shel Mesirus Nefesh v'ratzui haya olam lamata shamim ulay hiva makim sheyashav adam sham ela midbar. The kedusha, it was a holy midbar, but it was still a midbar. Loy haysam shachas alakus bekvias lamata. V'zeh haya chidusham shechameishis hatalmidim. That it says after that. After the Gemara says, V'haya olam shamim, it says, and then Rabbi Akiva went, discovered these 5 Talmidim, or put up these 5 Talmidim, Asher heim hemidu Torah. What's the expression hemidu Torah? Hemidu Torah means establishment, set, it's grounded, it's anchored. Avodah shel Shov. Bevadai hoysa gam eitzel Talmidim elu Talmid Rabbi Akiva Mesirus Nefesh. We're not saying that they were missing Mesirus Nefesh, but they had the Mesirus Nefesh in the right way. Ach etzlam hoya ze adrabe ba'ofen shel shleimus kefi shahoya etzel Rabbi Akiva Rabbah. Rabbi Akiva said all his life he was in the Tnuah Mesirus Nefesh, but he didn't lose his life over it. Sha'avodas haratzi shaloi hoysa ba'ofen shel nichnas b'shalom vehevia lidei v'yatza b'shalom. The famous thing that says arba nichnasu lepardos. There were 4 people that went into the Pardes. One fried out. It was Elish ben Avuya, Acher. One went crazy. One died. Ben Azai, Ben Zoim, I think it was, who's actually also Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva. And by Rabbi Akiva it says, Nichnas b'shalom v'yatzu b'shalom.
It was something physically that they went to a specific...
No, it means that spiritually their minds connected to very high and elevated places.
And what happened then to them?
So some of them, they couldn't bring their neshama back down to their body. And because they couldn't bring their neshama back down to the body in a healthy, good way, in a way of Shuv, it was like Klois HaNefesh. But the way the Klois HaNefesh expressed itself was by different people in different ways.
By them, if they had a Klois HaNefesh as they passed away?
So one, that's why I said, there were 3 different things. One died, one went crazy, and one went OTD. But Rabbi Akiva, it says, Nichnas b'shalom v'yatzu b'shalom. So the Rebbe always brings down why by Rabbi Akiva is saying Nichnas b'shalom and yatzu b'shalom. Everybody else is also Nichnas b'shalom. The difference was only the yatzu. What happened when they tried to leave, or when they went out. Why does it say by Rabbi Akiva Nichnas b'shalom? So the Rebbe always explains, Shalom means the idea of peace between the neshama and the guf, between the ratz and the shuv, between gashmias and ruchnias. When Rabbi Akiva went in, he had a goal. He was talking a state of ratzi, in klois hanefesh, in this nichnas lapardus, into this great spiritual level. But at the very same time, he had in the mind nichnas b'shalom, that he has to make peace with this, with the physical world, with the physical body, and so on. Therefore, because it was nichnas b'shalom, that's why it was yatz b'shalom. The others, when they went in already, they weren't going in right. They didn't go in with an oifen of shalom, with a mind on the goal. There's the very famous story that Reb Mendel Futterfass used to say concerning that he once asked a tightrope walker, how is it possible for you to do this, to walk without falling down or whatever? So he said, I don't look down. I look at where I have to go. And same thing by Rabbi Akiva. He didn't look up, I guess. He didn't fall upwards. He didn't fall into the Pardes, into Gan Eden. He had his eye on the purpose. Why am I nichnas lapardus? To make shalom between the body and the neshama. To make shalom between gashmis and ruchnis. Mesirus Nefesh v'arotzi shaloi haisa melchatchila kasher nichnas ba'ofen shal b'shalom ba'ofen sheyagia la'acher mekein l'dei yatz b'shalom shuv. Ritzaynoi lis alis ala kadosh baruch hu b'chlois hanefesh l'loi shum hagebola hei v'yoisoi l'dei tesefes shal chayis ad kedei shleimus ba'avodah shal amshachas alakus lamata. By the way, this approach of Rotzi and Shuv is really in everything in a Yid's life. We have one day of the week is Shabbos. We're out of this world. We're not supposed to be the other 6 days of the week out of this world. The other 6 days of the week, we come back into the world. With the koyach of Shabbos. Shabbos gives us the energy that even when we're in the world, we should be doing it in the right way. Shemitah versus the 7 years. Being in yeshiva, then going into the world. Learning Torah versus doing mitzvahs. Torah, you're just in a world of connection with Hashem. Mitzvahs, you're engaging with the physical world. Again, Torah mitzvahs versus Chol Masechel L'Shem Shemayim. There is always this type of what's called a tension between pulling upwards, between Ratzui and Shuv. And you can't just live in one alone. You can't just say, my job is just a Shuv, or my job is just a Ratzui. There has to be the combination of both. And that's what was missing in Talmid Rabbi Akiva. They only got half the picture. They got that great, powerful Mesirus Nefesh of Rabbi Akiva, but they missed the point of taking the Mesirus Nefesh and bringing it down to a Shuv. As opposed to Reb Shimon bar Yochai and the other Talmidim, but primarily Reb Shimon bar Yochai, that understood that message and brought that down as well. You want to ask something?
Yeah, actually the same question that I asked before. The Rabbi asked like very strong question. Like Rabbi Akiva was, his purpose of life was ואהבת לרעך כמוך. So how is תלמידים לא נהגו כבוד זה בזה? So actually it sounds like the answer of the Rabbi, it's not, okay, it was ואהבת לרעך כמוך, but there is another thing that Rabbi Akiva had that they also got. It's the עניין of Mesirus Nefesh. That he was like, his life was מתי יבוא לידי ויקיימנו. So also they have like very Mesirus Nefesh about their derech b'avodat Hashem. So they also wanted their.
But there's one more point. Their Avos Yisrael, because they cared about another Talmud, that meant that they took it ad asaf. They had to make sure. It doesn't say.
But
so in other places, the Rebbe explains, "Leinagu covered zelazeh," doesn't mean chas v'sholom that they were fighting or took the kameh or did other bad things. It was just they couldn't respect. Leinagu covered zelazeh. It doesn't say sonu zeh or some very strong lashonos. All it says is I couldn't respect someone that I felt was not following Rabbi Akiva's way. Rabbi Akiva's way in Avodah Hashem was supposed to be in a way of so and so, and and this is what I understood Rabbi Akiva's way is. And his other Talmud, a Talmud of Rabbi Akiva, he's not living up to what Rabbi Akiva is about. How could I respect him? I lost respect for that other Talmud. Not that he did something bad to the other Talmud. Not that he was like over on Leisika or Leisita or Leisisna or whatever. He just, the Rebbe says in a different place, Leinagu kavod. I couldn't hold them with the respect that one Talmud of Rabbi Akiva should have had the respect for another Talmud. So now the Rebbe adds another idea about this, that how this is hinted in the date when Lag BaOmer comes out.
Even the Rashbi, at the end of the day, when he came out of the Me'ara for the first time, it was the same.
The Rebbe is going to mention this actually in a footnote. Footnote, where is it? Footnote 30. Tistakel Sham at the end of the footnote. יש להם בדרך הרמז שזהו ההסבר לכך של"ג בעומר חל בחי באייר. ידוע המיימר של רבי סיינו סיינו לגבי חי אל, שזהו היום אשר מעניק חייס לעבודה של אל. ובדומה לכך ניתן לומר בענייננו שחי באייר, ל"ג בעומר, מעניק חייס לעבודה הרוחני של חודש אייר. So what's the Chodesh Iyar's avodah that it gives chayis to? ההסבר לכך הוא, עודס החדשים ניסן ואיר ידוע, שניסן החודש הראשון הוא כנגד מידס החסד, ואיר החודש השני הוא כנגד מידס הגבורה. Gvura is about rotzui. Gvura is about like fire going up. Chesed is kamayim. It's going down. I'm shochem al mailamata. Shezeu echad haizbeirim lekesher lebein ptiris l'talmid Rabbi Akiva le'mei asfira. Sheikram b'chodesh Iyar. That's primarily the days of Sfiras and the days of Iyar. Avodas Chodesh Iyar, he bekava gvura halam u'matal amayla ratzui. And that was their problem. They didn't have this idea about like remaining in this world. They had this Mesirus Nefesh adasof, that my way has to be the correct way. Ba'lag ba'omer u'maynik chayis ba'avodah zu sha'aratzui va'allah lo yu ba'ofen hamevil dei lamus va'olam shomem ela adra u'mevi chayis pasha to live, to be a neshama beguf down here ba'avodah zu she tavil de avodah shel shuv nichnas b'shalom v'yatsa b'shalom oifen zeh shel avodah nimtza begolui.
גבורה היא בעצם עבודת האדם?
Gevura can also be avodah sa'adim,
No, like-
but it's an avodah of ratzui, and chesed is an avodah of shuv.
הפוך.
Huh?
חסד it's
Is
שוב.
amshachem u'maylamata, right? It could be amshachem u'maylamata that comes from the Eibishter. Sivan is the Tiferes, so it's a chibur between chesed and gevura, so it combines the ratzui and the shuv together.
But I thought that like בעומר is the point of Shov.
So that's why it's called chayis. At that time, when you hit Lag Ba'omer, so it's already like turning it around and bringing it down to Shuv. Oifen zeh shel avodah nimtza begoluim, eitz Rab Shim b'yechaim. B'shloish esrei shnois shehusei b'ma'aram, haya Rab Shim b'yechaim mevuded min ha'olam. His life was a life of ratzui. Ad kedei kach shloi haya b'afsharusei l'kayim kama mitzvahs ma'asis, v'ukim man rak v'mashmusen ha'ruchnis v'zeh ratzui. This is similar to where it says the of is kimu kol Torah kula lifnei shenitna. They couldn't be mekayim film that speaks about Yitzias Mitzrayim or whatever. They couldn't be mekayim the mitzvah of telling about the story of Yitzias Mitzrayim, Zachar Shasa, because these things didn't happen. So when they fulfilled these mitzvahs, they fulfilled it beruchnis. The same thing that Rab Shimon bar Yochai, when he was in the Ma'ara and he couldn't fulfill begashmis many mitzvahs, so he fulfilled the mitzvahs beruchnis. Meaning, that's like a life of ratzui. That's out of this world. It's not having to do with the world. Ach zeh atzmai hevil edei kach shebetzeisem min ha'ma'ara loy pol mit der gesbeidus v'israchos miyutshu v'olam. He could have been in such a type of way where 13 years he spent out of this world. So that's it. That would have been a new avodah for Rab Shimon bar Yochai. He said, this is the way we have to go. We have to remove ourselves from this world. Just the opposite. The 13 years that he was in the Ma'ara prepared him to be more into the world. And the Rebbe says, what you mentioned before, specifically the last year, because after 12 years it says that Rab Shimon bar Yochai and Rab Lazar left the Ma'ara, and then Rab Shimon bar Yochai said, he saw people working in the field, he says, Torah Mate'ala, and he made them into a pile of stones, pile of bones when he looked at them. So David says, go back. You're not ready for the world yet. And that 13th year brought Rab Shimon bar Yochai down into this world in a way of Shuv. Elo lehepech. Kol heched avemachi Rabbi Lazar avemaser Rab Shimon. That kol machin shapag by Rabbi Lazar, deeper Rab Shimon, that Rabbi Lazar didn't learn his lesson. Rabbi Lazar, even after the 13th year, after being sent back to the Ma'ara and year number 13, he still kept on looking at the world like, what are these people doing? What's going to be with Torah learning? So wherever Rabbi Lazar would destroy, Rabbi Shimon healed. So we see Rabbi Shimon realized the Maila of Shuv. Hu hevi refuah la'olam. V'yoyser mekach amar ikim milsa de boilet kune, hemiyash davar ma ton tikun. He was looking for things to make life easier. The Gemara speaks about that there was a problem, that there was some kohenim couldn't travel and take a shortcut through a certain field because there was a shaila that it might be a dead body was lost in the field. What would be the halacha and so on? So because of suffix, they were going around. And the Rebbe said it's an amazing thing. So they were walking extra. What's so terrible? And was only certain people, only kohenim, and only the kohenim that had to go in that area. And still in all, Reb Shimon bar Yochai spent his time on trying to find an opportunity and a way to fix, even for these few people, to save them a few steps.
He was digging up the field? Or
No. He figured out how they wouldn't have a problem by investigating whatever. Ki et Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai asher amar midoisai trumis mitrumis midois mit Rabbi Akiva. In other words, I took from the midas of Rabbi Akiva, haise begolui shleimus darkish Rabbi Akiva rabbi ba'avodah haruchnis. Rabbi Akiva was a spiritual Rav. Derech shall nichnas b'shalom v'yatz b'shalom. Knisase v'shiyase b'ma'ara, which is a level of ratzui, hevil de shuv tikun v'yishuv ha'olam. It was also about settling into the world. It says that before Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai went into the Ma'ara, so it says that when he asked a whole bunch of questions, when he asked a question, Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair would answer him a lot of answers. Once he went out of the Ma'ara, it was just the opposite. For every question that Pinchas ben Yair asked, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai answered him many questions. Lifnei Shabbos Ma'ara, Machshir Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai mefarek lo metar say Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair v'treisa peruke, and Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair answered him 12 answers on every question that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai asked. V'lo la'achar Ma'ara Machshir Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair umefarek lo Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai ve'esr v'arba perukim, 24 terutzim kiflaim l'tashiyah, which means that's the difference between a kasha and a teretz. In Torah, kasha is like a rotzi. You're out of it. You don't get it. You're above it. Shov is when you were able to answer it, when you bring it down. So Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, instead of being the makshin, which is what he was before he went into Mara, now, after he came out of the Mara, he became the tartzin, and twice as much as the terutz of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair gave beforehand.